markets have just opened, Siddharth, quite flat this morning. The Nifty up 13 points, 0.06% up. The BSE Sensex 77,582 points, that's just 67 points up. Last couple of days, the markets recovered from some of their lows. But over the last few weeks, the markets have been trending downwards.
In fact, this week has been interesting. A 3-week decline was reversed. This is the first week. And by the way, since we having a 6th day of trade, we have seen through the week markets on recovery mode. After the economic survey and its content around consumption, I think there was a further boost that was provided to market sentiment. But clearly, there's a reversal at this point of time. Trading cautiously, waiting for the final speech and announcement, and we'll see the real reaction play out post the budget. But clearly, from a market's point of view, a fillip to growth is what will be one of the key sentiments. But private corporate earnings, and this was another point, Rahul, that we have picked up and discussed yesterday, the economic survey making this very, very telling point. And if you connect it with the Prime Minister's middle class point, I would say the government is telling corporate India that your profits have gone up. Post-COVID, you have enjoyed much higher margins, but you have squeezed your employees. Your wage growth has been not as high as before. And I think that is the central message. If private
but what can they do? I mean, the government has been trying to talk up investment from private companies, has been saying, okay, ensure that there's wage growth for your employees. But they're doing what they are. I mean, the government can't really force corporates to give better increments.
I think it's a larger debate around how corporate India, private sector wants to grow its employee base. Look at the debate. Mr. Murthy said 70 hours. Mr. Subramaniam was misquoted around 90 hours. But the bottom line is corporate India wants its young people to work harder. So pay them better.
Can I just ask across this table, because as a small investor,
who's a small investor?
In the markets.
Yही problem है. Rajdeep भी अपने आप को middle class समझते हैं. Now that's really problematic, Rajdeep.
No, we have to define.
No, but you can't think of yourself as being middle class. There's a real problem.
We can have a separate debate on how to define the Indian middle class, because I think that is one
of the.
But
you don't think you're middle class.
I certainly, my mindset is that of a middle class.
Mindset नहीं, wallet से होता है.
What I want to understand, the markets itself. What do you believe, Rajiv, the markets are looking for? And to the extent that because the last 6 to 8 weeks have been so turbulent, do you get a sense that the markets are hoping that the budget will reassure them in some way or the other?
I think what markets would seek is a renewed commitment for reforms. So as long as there are enough signals in the budget that there are going to be continued reforms across the different parameters that we have discussed, we will see that that positive sentiment will return. If we see
Punita Sena joins us, and who are better to explain the expectations in the market than Punita. But the fact is, a lot of those reforms can now actually be done by the state governments and not really by the centre. So given that reality, what realistically can Finance Minister Sitharaman do? Both the BSE and the NSE currently in the red, just very moderately, but in the red nonetheless. What can the Finance Minister do to cheer the markets?
Well, the markets only care about taxes, right? So they really don't want any change in long-term, short-term capital gains tax, for one. So as simple as that. But what the Finance Minister can do today is to reassure on the growth side that the economy is going to continue to grow, and all the stress that is happening in the financial sector, in the rural sector, there's some measures to address that. But even then, whatever happens today, the market may react positively or negatively, and that may continue for a week, 2 weeks. But ultimately, the markets are going to react to global cues. And what President Trump does is probably more important than what the budget does today.
So is this a year of volatility? Is that built into it? Given the nature of Trumpism, Trump is not going to change the way he does his politics over the next 12 months. So is it built into it, and therefore a budget can only be a temporary balm at best?
Yes, that's what I said. I think the budget is only a temporary balm because there's so many global factors that are also affecting flows into India, the currency movements. Our exporters are going to be impacted by what President Trump does. So what we can focus on is the domestic economy, and what the Finance Minister should do is to really reassure that the domestic economy is on track, that's what we can control. What we can't control is the overseas
So
stuff.
Karan Bhasin is in New York. He's an economist. He's based there. Ajit Ranade joins us. And I have Naveen Raheja, Chairman and Managing Director at Raheja Developers, joining us as well. So let me go across to Karan first. Donald Trump coming out with tariffs coming into impact from today against Canada and against China. 10% against China, 25% against Canada. Why is he more irked with Canada than he is with China, for one? And he's also spoken of tariffs against pharma companies in India. You got Prime Minister Modi going to TC in a couple of weeks from now. So is he going to mar that visit by coming out with this pharma tariff? Or is it really, in your view, a negotiating tactic?
Well, the sentiment at present over here looks like, trying to eliminate as much of trade deficit as possible. And naturally, US, of course, trades a lot with Canada, and that's the reason why, long friends have now become bitter enemies, so much so that there was a suggestion to make it another state. So my sense is that the consensus on global trade has shifted a lot, and you would find in general tariffs would go up all over the world. And I recall very briefly there was this deal that was on the cards between India and US, which was also proposed when President Trump was in India. And at that point, of course, we weren't able to close it because US wanted a bigger deal. Luckily, there seems to be a rethink on trade policy that the US has done. So I'm hopeful that when Prime Minister Modi is in the US, they may be able to make some considerable progress and prevent those pharma tariffs from going up. But as I said, in general, you should expect some tariffs to, go up, and that would be the norm going forward. The period of globalization seems to be
Ajit Ranade, in the
over.
way that Minister Piyush Goyal and the Commerce and Industry Ministry have been navigating these trade negotiations, they've been going very slowly and deliberately. Donald Trump is going tuck, tuck, tuck. He's expecting a limited trade deal. Can that actually happen in the couple of weeks? There was a high advanced conversation last time around. It didn't materialize in a trade deal. But in the way that he's coming up with this slew of executive orders, can the Indian government move at that pace? Is that at all probable, possible? Because that's clearly what Trump seems to be expecting.
No, Rahul, I think our track record is that we don't move as fast. And remember that President Trump is actually his reputation is a very transactional guy. So he is looking for quid pro quo. And he's willing to actually give preferential treatment if there is something for the Americans. And therefore, India should actually, I think, stick to the fact that our exports are import intensive. Very, very important, whether it's petroleum and diesel, whether it's polished diamonds, even electronics, even iPhone assembly. We are exporting iPhones out of India or mobile phones, but they're import intensive. So any increase in tariffs actually hurts eventually our exports as well. So we have to have a firm commitment towards low and moderate tariffs. Our actually tariffs have been going up for the last few years consistently, which is not a good trend. The great achievement of the 91 reforms was to substantially bring down tariffs, import tariffs. We cannot reverse that. So I think our commitment to low tariffs should remain. And the deal with Trump is that we have to not aim for a very comprehensive package, but transactional. For example, our software exports to the US is a shining success story. This year we clocked $250 billion. Just two items, Rahul. $250 billion of export of software services and $129 billion of remittances, inward remittances. These together are almost $500 billion. These are the two most important items we must safeguard and nurture.